Ladies and gentlemen, can we stand for the pledge? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, and I want to say off to the start, I'm very happy to see about over a dozen people here, as guests on this nice, cool afternoon. We got air conditioning in here, thank God. So, but it's nice to see people here. Thank you very much for attending on an off night for our special meeting of the Board of Education dedicated to the facilities study. So I'm going to move on. Is anyone here for public participation? No sign-ups, correct, Joe? Okay, no one here for public participation. Then we are going to move on, and I'd like to introduce Michelle Miller from Silver Petroselli Associates. She has a lot of patience dealing with us since probably September, but really December with the ad hoc committee. And the kind of the format for tonight, what I'd like to do is, this is the first time the full board officially has heard anything since the facilities committee passed on their first recommendation to the full board. So what I'd like to do is have Michelle go through her presentation of the different things that she gave to the group. Please ask questions. I'll also, we have a couple of members here, Bill, Dan from the facilities committee, Tim, right, Megan. Am I forgetting anyone? Steve behind you. Yep.
Jen and Lee.
Jen. Yep. Okay. Got everybody? All right. That's why you never do it, because you forget somebody.
I know.
So thank you all for coming, and when we get into discussion, I'd like those committee members to chip in where appropriate too, so that the full board can have an understanding of, we looked at this, we looked at that. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to solve this tonight, certainly. I'd like to have a nice presentation and a very good discussion pretty much of where does the full board want to go from here. There's a lot of steps moving forward, and this is certainly not final. Whatever we decide still has to go to the town of Monroe for a very long process as well. Joe, any opening remarks?
No, I think you hit everything right on the head.
Okay, then Michelle, we're going to move and
Well, thank you.
Go ahead. Thank you.
We did try to put a summary of kind of everything we've done over the last 13 months together, so bear with me, interrupt me if you need to, because I don't need to hear my voice this whole time. It's a little much. But anyway, so the review of the master plan entails the facility conditions, which I did present to you all back in September, the enrollment projections, which MP Planning did back in October for you all, a program overview. We're going to look at the configuration options that we explored, including new sites and utilizing St. Jude. And then we're going to focus in on the options B and F1 and ultimately option B. And we'll explain some other parts along the way. So I'm just going to hit the high point of the facility conditions since you've all heard it before, but this was a review of the site, architectural, fire protection, plumbing, mechanical, electrical, based on our visual observations and, looking at that compared to the code and ADA, where we created these spreadsheets for you that totaled up to a good amount of money. We prioritized that 1, 2, 3, and 4, 1 being an urgent priority that you should address now, with 4 being a recommendation and the mix in between. So just to highlight on Fawn Hollow, I'm just going to give you the total cost. We had about $20.6 million, and you could see in the charts below how that's broken up into each category and into your priorities. You'll typically see priority 2 pretty high, because that's going to include all the ADA issues that are typically at most of your schools because of their age. Monroe Elementary School, we had $24.1 million, and again, you can kind of see a similar path. Mechanical often takes a good chunk of this because most of these schools are in need for that. Stepney Elementary School, just over $20 million, and again, it's really kind of the same story for the 3 elementary schools there. All right, so moving on to Jockey Hollow. We know this is your newest school, constructed in 1998, but there's still a good deal of items here. Some of it is ADA still, because ADA adapted in 2010, so we look at what was adapted from them. And then it's high because of the mechanicals, again. In Massac High School, much larger building, so the number kind of grows with that. Mechanical is pretty large here, and so is your priority twos. So Chalk Hill, obviously, this building hasn't been used in quite a while. We did add numbers in here to add furniture and create the servery, so we were trying to kind of think of a big picture. So that number does include that, although you'll see as we explore Chalk Hill more, that number will grow as we look at renovation costs. So here's just an overall kind of big picture item. We'll reference $175 million often. That's kind of like the total cost of everything all in. So next we look at the 10-year enrollment projections. I am not a demographer, so I'm kind of just hitting the high points, and I know Joe will want to jump in. We're going to talk about a couple things here. I'll pass it to Joe. Ooh, I don't know what happened.
Does not want me to talk. Right. Yeah, so this was the original, this was the demography chart that we got from MP Planning. Just so you see the colors. And by the way, all of everything that Michelle just showed you is on the full deficiencies report is on the district planning page, as well as the full enrollment projection. That's all on the landing page on the website. When MP Planning put this together, the demographers put this together, it just kind of showed us, where are we going to start to see when things start to tighten up, and that's the areas in red. But I put this together. It's the exact same chart, and I know there's a lot of colors, but it really, as we were looking at trends and analyzing the trends over time and seeing what was going on, I found something really interesting, because we've kind of seen, around the time of the pandemic, that population started to shift, and that's when we started talking about it a little bit in 1920, more so in 21-22, 2021, 21-22. And if you look at it, it's really interesting, because when you look at this chart, that's great, but you can't really see the cohort growth in there or lack of growth. This chart, what I did, I put this together so you could see the cohort. So here's a good example right here, just to see what's happening in our district over, with this graduating senior class that just left with 283 kids. So the reason why I have it so it's nice and easy to follow in blue. If you follow that 283 back, last year there were 274, then there were 271, then there were 263, 259, 254, blah, 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 blah. That group of 283 started as a class of 193. And that's what we're seeing from basically, so where you see like the numbers are black and the numbers are white, and it really starts around that 21-22 year, we have this pretty significant growth from cohorts. So like if you look at the year before, this class of 270 started as a class of 204. If you look above that, the class of 308 started as a class of 245. So you're talking about 60, 70, 80 kids in some of these situations. And that was kind of unique over the past few years. And if you look at all of this, these are the kids still in the pipeline now. So even if you look at like our current, what is this, the kids who just finished third grade, 283 kids, they were 254 only 3 years ago. So you see this growth. All these numbers down here with the black numbers, you see that. In the white numbers above and in these darker colors here, you'll notice that we did not have this cohort growth happening before that. So it's pretty interesting. If you look at, for example, the class of 2020, 2021, we're like kind of the last year of this stuff, they finished as a class of 268. They started as a class of 251. So they picked up 17 kids over 13 years. Not a huge increase. Interestingly, if you look at the next group, they started out at 235 and finished at 242, only picked up 7 kids. The next group started out as 267 and ended as 256. They lost 9 kids. The next group, you look at, they started at 314 and finished at 306. So all this, you see that trend happening all these years, and then that reverses here in that 21, 22. And you look at all of our cohorts that are in right now. These are all of our, this is our ninth grade class that just finished. They're finished this year at 253. They started as 169. So we're seeing pretty significant cohort growth. I just think that's an important thing to share. Especially because our kindergarten numbers this year, and I talked to the demographer a little bit today about this, our kindergarten numbers registered for this coming year, so it's still too early to say, but they're lower than I would have anticipated right now. But we did have that kindergarten change, and this was like the first year that parents could really prepare for it. Because remember, this was kind of abruptly thrown on us last year with the legislative session, so a lot of people might have started their kindergarten kids. So we're trying to keep an eye on that, because right now it's at 190. We had originally projections of around 217. So we'll get some kids over the summer. I don't think we're going to get 27 kids over the summer, but it'll be interesting if this pattern continues. And you see that, all these groups that, from the groups that, the 4 previous groups that just graduated and so on, it just increases, and it's increasing at a pretty significant rate. And I just think that's an important thing for us to be aware of.
Really proud that you explained the change that happened legislatively.
So the change from the change legislatively with kindergarten was that it used to be that if your birthday was December 31st, actually I think it was January 1st for some weird reason, but you could start your kid in kindergarten. The legislature changed that date to September 1st. We have a waiver, so now if you're born before September 1st, you have to go through a waiver process to get into kindergarten. We have not been really big gatekeepers of that here. We have a process for people to go through the waiver and then make a decision based on, information that they get from our preschool group. But we're not, but last year that was kind of sprung on people pretty late. They didn't have a long time to prepare. They didn't have time to prepare for daycare. What I think we might be seeing now is some of those people now with kids in September, October, November, December, not going through the waiver process because they don't want their kids to be the youngest kids. And anecdotally, what I'm also hearing is you have now some people who, back in the day, if your kid was born in December or November, you're like, you know what, they're still a little young, I'm not going to start them yet. Well, now that's getting pushed back to like August and July, and they're saying, well, I'll keep my kid back because they're going to be the youngest in their grade. So I just thought that was really important for us to see the trend that's happening, and those are this isn't a projection. These are the kids that are in front of us and have been in front of us for the past 15 years. Thanks, Michelle.
No problem. So they also look at births, and the next 5 years, those children are already born, but they have to project in and hone in on how many kids they anticipate being born in those next 5 years. So they track that, compare it to other towns. They're looking at your housing market. There's a lot of ongoing projects up and coming, so they do factor that in based on the type of bedrooms that they have, and they can project how many children they think will come out of that. They also look at migration, net migration in district, and then they start to create the enrollment projections. They do a high, medium, and low. I'm sorry, the low's at the bottom, obviously. They recommended us to follow the medium, so that's what we're doing here. And now you want to do this one?
Sure. And then I put this together as well. Some of this information, thank you to Steve Kirsch. I know you had pulled some of this information, and I got it onto this spreadsheet. And then I was able to go back. Full disclosure that it's not a mistake. You'll see 91, 92, 92, 93, 93, 94, blah, blah, blah. Then you get up. I've said blah, blah, blah twice. I apologize. That's really not English, etc. It goes 2000, 2001, and then 2002, 2003. I could not find, I couldn't go back in the state, and I didn't have, Steve, your information went up to 2000, 2001, so I don't have 01, 02. So I'm sure that number is right in here somewhere. It's not, I don't think it's really statistically significant. But the purpose of this is I just wanted to kind of show people, again, when we look at trends of our enrollment over the past 35 years, what's happening, as well as projecting out. So just to be fair, I probably should have colored these. If I was a better Excel person, I would have colored these red, because these are projections out, 25, 26 to 34, 35. These last few ones are projections out. But if you look at, our enrollment, when Christy Fensor graduated high school. What year did you graduate? 91 or 91. The year after. The year after. You see this 3198, and then you see we reached our peak in 2004 or 5. So you see from like 02 to 07, we're really in our peak here, and then we had that decrease, and now here we are, starting on this upswing again. It's important to know too, though, with this, like these years right here, we also had almost 250 students from either Oxford. The majority of them were from Oxford. We had about 235 students from Oxford. And then we also participated in Project Choice at the time, which allowed students from Bridgeport to come to Monroe Public Schools as well. So, this number of, 4458 at the height with just Monroe kids was closer to 4,200, which gets us closer to where we're kind of heading. So just so we have that. A couple of other things that are important in understanding all this. 11-12, this is the first year without Chalk Hill. So 10-11, Chalk Hill was just grade 6 only. And then 11-12 was the first year without Chalk Hill. And then another thing that's, put strains on us as a district, and it came at a good time while population was decreasing. The district made the really good decision to start offering full-day kindergarten in 2013-14. But understand that what full-day kindergarten means now, as compared to then, when it was half-day kindergarten. Now we have, this past year we had, I believe it was 12 sections of kindergarten. Well, that used to be able to be handled by 6 teachers. Now, because it's full-day kindergarten, it's 12 teachers to cover the 12 sections. So it just kind of shows us the ebbs and flows. And I know we've talked about this, Dave, about these kind of like 15-year ebbs and flows.
So ultimately, they end with this chart, which projects all the way out over the next 10 years, and you do see those numbers starting to get into the 4,000s total. For state projects, we can only look at the first 8 years, and I'll explain that more a little bit later. The next step that we did was looking at programming and space planning. I did present to you on the capacity at that point, but we took a much deeper dive throughout the next few months into this. So just so you all know, educational program this is a spreadsheet totaling all the spaces in your school, all what needs to happen for all of your education, for all of the support, for your administration. This is just a diagram showing spaces, that are basically in here. And we just want to know as much as possible because it's how spaces relate to each other and how it can set everything up. And there were 3 programs we did talk about a lot here, pre-K, therapeutic day, and alternative education that we wanted to incorporate.
Can you talk more about pre-K? I know right now it's not full day, right? It's
Correct.
Split in the...
Yeah, right now our pre-K program is very similar to the kindergarten program that we had years ago, to some extent, but even less. It's half day, mornings and afternoons, but it's only 4 days a week. And then the teachers, in order to provide for their preparation time and their PPTs and whatnot, do that on Wednesdays. So part of the goal of looking at this whole study was to be able to offer a more comprehensive pre-K program in the future.
What about like surrounding districts like Newtown and Trumbull? Do they have...
Do you know, Jen? If they have...
Trumbull has a huge program. They have their own building tech, and they run programs at 5 hours a day.
Okay.
I think they do 4 days a week. I'm not 100% sure, but I think they do run 4 days and then that one day is for.
What about Newtown?
But I can tell you that we are only 2 hours and 45 minutes per session, and that is a lot less time than other districts around us.
For sure.
I'm sure that Newtown is only 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Okay, sorry, to take us back a slide. Before we get into where the student needs are, which is where we need to live, nowhere in your analysis, the committees, everybody else has taken in HR 5002 that just got vetoed down. The impact on what that would have in town, am I correct?
I'm sorry, you have to say that again.
HR 5002 for affordable housing in town, the bill that just got vetoed by the governor yesterday, I think it was yesterday.
Okay.
I was going to add like 360 affordable houses to the town. None of that is in this analysis, correct?
Well,
Only.
we did look at the approved ones. I didn't mean
Yes.
to cut you off,
No,
Michelle.
approved,
but
We
that's
have
right.
looked at
Approved-
the-
only
well,
approved.
We can't look,
Right.
but we did do the approved ones. The 199 on Route 25, the 99 on Turkey Roost, that was all included in this.
Not the
And
impact
that's coming up. The housing stuff, right, that's coming up.
I hit it somewhere. Oh, there. Oh, okay. So I don't want to hit the wrong
Pondview,
button.
Quarry Ridge.
Yeah, these are the ones
all
that they
those
counted.
So the approved ones, but if they're not approved,
Approved total, yeah, so 32 units, 317 there. And this is them with the bedroom, based on the bedrooms, and they have a formula of how many students that would equate to. And there is more information in that, on this. I just had the highlight here.
Joe, just quickly, I had the pleasure on sitting on ad hoc, but for those that don't understand the therapeutic program, because I know you just hit it quick, Michelle,
I did,
could you
yeah.
explain just a little bit what it is?
Jen?
Sorry, Jen, I didn't mean to do that to you, but I've gotten so many emails, I figured I'd let the pro do it.
Yeah, so we've been talking about a therapeutic day program for quite a while. Right now, we have students who are not able to stay in district due to either internalizing behaviors or externalizing behaviors, so we send them out to outplacements. The therapeutic day program in and of itself is a program that has wraparound services for students who are dysregulated, so behavior-wise. So, like I said, either internalizing or externalizing. And they're smaller programs, they have a much higher staff to student ratio. There are programs where they have different kinds of behavioral programs and things like that for students. So it is something that we need in district. This is something that the state's talking about because they are offering grant money moving forward to help us create these things. So it's not in that. So this is very exciting to talk about and have, space for this in district because we've been talking about this for about a year now. It's essentially what we're- Yes.
I know that's something with a lot of, most school districts, they have some form of that, variations of it.
Right, like Trumbull Public Schools has the REACH program, and we send quite a few students to that program. They run a wonderful program, so if they can do it, we can absolutely do it here as well. So we've been using that program for, I would say, over 20 years.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and Jen did have a presentation on that, which we will include in the appendix of the report that we'll be handing out shortly. So educational design has evolved a lot. So this is kind of capturing the era of when most of your buildings were built. They don't meet the needs of education today. So some of what we'll get into is some of the special ed and intervention type spaces.
I walked to school 10 miles and home.
Jerry, didn't you dig out the slate board?
He made the desk.
Some of the main things that we see today requested in schools are increases in spaces for special ed and intervention, which is probably one of the biggest things we noted here. It's there's a quote here of the increase of that over the last 10 years going on in Connecticut.
Yeah, it's just, sorry to interrupt.
It's okay.
19%, right, John? The population here, which is similar across the state.
We also are seeing an increase in just smaller breakout type spaces, an increase in STEAM, STEM, and CTE programs, technology and furniture, community use, security, HVAC, and improving the teacher space. So then we focus in on each school and kind of highlight the deficiencies that we reviewed with the principals as we toured these buildings. Some of the items here at Fawn Hollow, they're the ones probably hurt the most with enrollment right now, and their art and music are not able to fit in the art and music rooms. They're using the teacher's room for art often and the stage for music. Additionally, special ed, they're on top of each other, multiple teachers in one room. They really would like to break out and have some additional rooms. The media center is antiquated. It's basically 2 classrooms kind of opened, and it's an old library. Today we're seeing maker spaces and a lot more interaction with media and everything. And then the administration suite, there's some lacking space, especially with the nurses suite there. They have the largest population of students and yet the smallest nurse's office with the school server in there. So we want to improve on those things. We then explore capacity at the school, and this is part of what I presented to you all last time. Right now, as of last year, they were currently operating at 98%, which is pretty high, getting into the uncomfortable zone. And if we look at the projections without moving students around, it's going to get up to 112%. Additionally, the school right now is 66,000 square feet, when the state says for that amount of students it can be 78,000. So right there we see that there is space lacking at this school. Looking at Monroe Elementary School, we had a few more deficiencies here. We have an entrance here. We get that that's a vestibule, but it's just a little remote from the office, so we're kind of calling that out. The gym's a bit undersized for an elementary school gym, typically. Special ed, again, here. At this school in particular, there's a lot of small rooms on top of each other that you have to go through one to the other, creating a lot of inefficiencies. Some of the pre-K is a little small, and they don't have bathrooms. Some of the kindergarten doesn't have bathrooms within there, which is typical. Board of Ed's upstairs, it's a little small for them. They're kind of taking space that would help the school itself. And then art is upstairs. It's actually a pretty small classroom for art. And then the technology building's there, a little bit antiquated there. And again, the media center, even smaller here, kind of the same as at Fawn Hollow. So here, they are currently operating. The number's a little bit skewed because of the pre-K half day, I realize. So it's not quite as bad as the 105 looks, but it's just the amount of students, how the formula worked out. But if they stay as they are, they will move up to 107%. And this school is kind of on target size with what the state would allow, a little bit over. Stepney Elementary School, it's pretty much a similar story. Again, small special ed classes on top of each other, antiquated media center, and they noted a lack of staff restrooms throughout. I think the dead-end wings kind of limit, where a teacher has to travel to a bathroom, long wings. So this school is currently operating at 94%, and with the projections, it would get to 105%. And the size of this school is kind of spot on for its current enrollment. So we just kind of put some summary charts together just so you can kind of look at all of them. We do focus in on how many general classrooms each building has, because that's going to really feed into our capacity. But we also want to improve upon a lot of these programs as we move forward. Another thing that we did was kind of created a benchmarking slide where we compared standard sizes of some of your basic components. Like a pre-K classroom is typically 1,200 square feet. The ones at Monroe Elementary are averaging at 770. So they are smaller. They do meet other standards, so it's not the end of the world. It's just, it'd be ideal with a little more space. Same with your kindergarten classrooms. Again, just kind of tracking those, comparing those to standards. Classrooms, science. Media is pretty funky. The state has a formula for that based on enrollment. However, as designers, we like to see at least 2,000 to 2,500 square feet to really program a media center. Gyms, they have a range for that. We're kind of just showing that, art, music, and just tracking that. But then I think most importantly, what we did is the principals and the director of student services and I all got together and really put our heads together. What is the perfect special ed at each school? How can we create equity in each building and offer the same programs? So we created a standard that will change a little based on enrollment. You'll need more resource rooms with a greater enrollment. So we kind of set this standard that we're going to move forward as we get into the master planning. Now we're looking at Chalk Hill. We had no one to talk to there really because it's sitting there empty, but just some of the things that we pointed out was food service upstairs is challenging for food deliveries, for egress, all of that. And then also the media center up there lacks windows, but it's a nice size. But that was really the only kind of things we could point out at this point. Obviously, no one's utilizing the building, but we did just kind of look at it. What if 5th and 6th went there, and it would operate at 87%, which is a nice, I think, really comfortable number. So Jockey Hollow does have some deficiencies. I think with 6th grade in the building, it's creating a lot of inefficiencies for them because it was set up for 2 grades teaming structure. One grade per each floor, and now they're kind of intermingling a little bit, which creates challenges. They have the same story, special ed on top of each other, small classrooms. Their media center, they feel, is also, location isn't ideal, and there's not much we can really change about that, but they'd love a modernization there, to bring it up for the middle schoolers. And their biggest problem is with their cafeteria and servery. Their servery is too small, it's creating major issues, and the cafeteria itself is also small. And then there's also a lack of exterior space for them. So this school is currently operating at 76%, which I feel doesn't reflect what's really happening in there, because that 6th grade is kind of hindering it. They're having more struggles than you would at typically at 76%. But the projected utilization with 6 through 8 and keeping the STEM program would get them to 115%. So we see a big problem coming that way. If we relocate 6th grade, they'll be around 97%. Massac High School, their biggest problem is a lack of space. They are storing things in little corridors. They really could use some extra classrooms, and the STEM wing really does limit that. They are currently operating at 85% and would be projected to operate at 105 if the STEM program stays. If it's just 9th through 12th, it'll be about 90%. Again, a really good number. So just a summary to kind of compare your upper level schools together. And again, we did the same benchmarking, slightly different standards for these schools, and nothing jumps out. You know, some of the classrooms are smaller than your standard, but that's pretty typical of their age, of the age of buildings, and it's not a big concern or anything. Okay, so now that we kind of really did our fact finding, we understand the state of your buildings, we know what the projections are, and we know your programming needs, we can really start to kind of pull this together and see what solutions we can come up with. So the committee started, and immediately we established goals. So these are the goals that kind of guided the process. We want these facilities efficiently utilized. We want, you know, a modern state-of-the-art facility that's also well-maintained, kind of in summary. But part of it was we wanted to enhance the programming. So we will kind of show solutions to most of those issues. So this is that same projections, that medium model that we're using, but in green I start to kind of highlight, you know, when we were looking at different grade configurations, like here's your biggest K through 3 grade, because I'm going to want to grab that number where the biggest projections are within the 8-year window. So we also have individual school ones, so I kind of focus on that as we're looking at different scenarios. So we're going to look at potential configurations to kind of restructure the schools and address this enrollment issue. So the first option, option A, was maintain existing. We put these charts together with the projections for each grade, totaling those up, kind of comparing that with the capacity. These are the 8-year high, and these are the minimum classrooms that would be needed just for your general classrooms. No programming kind of was involved yet. We just kind of needed to focus in on the kind of simple aspect of it. The next option was option B, Chalk Hill as a 5 through 6. It really addressed all the enrollment issues right away. We don't need to add any major classrooms, but we do have a major renovation, obviously, at Chalk Hill. Option C was to close Monroe Elementary School, and we did that just because, you know, when we're studying this, we're adding a 6th building on. You're going to have much bigger, I'm drawing a blank. Operational costs, thank you. So we need to look at what happens if we took a school offline, bring one on, and look at different scenarios. Monroe was picked just because of its deficiencies, its age, and it being the smallest school. We need some bigger schools. So it was just to explore that. So this would expand Fawn Hollow and Stepney and have still have a 5-school district. It still would require additions at the elementary schools. Next option was option D. What if there was a new elementary school? We even keep Monroe. You know, this new elementary school could be Chalk Hill. We kind of have talks about that. It could be some new school that we'll get into as we explore some sites.
There'll be a K6 configuration.
Thank you, I missed that, yep. Those were our K6. The next one, option E, this one was a little crazy, but it was looking at trying to utilize the buildings and give every student the exact same experience, pre-K, K school, with a 1-2 school, a 3-4 school. This one was immediately ruled off just because of so many transitions. It's not really ideal. That's kind of where we ended originally, and we had a lot of discussion, and some people had said, let's look at a bigger new school. So we put in another option for a new intermediate school, a 4, 5, 6. And this did become a discussion about becoming Chalk Hill, not necessarily a new school, but next we looked at option G, which is a new large elementary school and close Monroe again. This is a K-6 also, and the K-6 was also off the table after a while, and no one really wanted to explore that grade structure. Option H was close Monroe Elementary School and have everything at the campus. Fawn Hollow and Stepney was the specialized school for pre-K, therapeutic day, and Board of Ed. And then that kind of morphed into F1, or not that one. F1 became something that was discussed and became a contender, where Monroe wasn't closed but became the specialized school for pre-K, alternative education, therapeutic day, and Board of Ed. So with these scenarios and these new schools, is there even potential for that? So we received a list of 288 town-owned properties. Some of them were postage-sized sites, but we looked at everything to see what it was next to. Could sites be added together? And our review was solely off of GIS, so it's not a deep dive. There's probably many unknowns just looking at GIS. But we concluded with 7 semi-viable options, I'm going to say, but then 3 of them were removed due to OSWA grants. So this is just a map showing the 4 that we kind of honed in on, and I'm not getting into detail with them because none of them were great. But Bart Road, Harvester Road, Wheeler Road, and then Wolf Park. And Wolf Park was really the only one that could actually fit the site requirements. Here is a form from the state where it's a recommendation on how you find site size, but an elementary school should be 10 acres plus an additional acre for every 100 students. So that's like 15 acres we want to find, and we couldn't find anything that met that. Did you have a question?
I did. Those are all town-owned properties, right?
They're all town-owned properties, but there's a few caveats with them. Like, I think I forget right now, it might have been Harvester Road's next to a state-owned property, and we said if you could get that, it could possibly work. So there were some caveats.
Like in the case of Monroe, with property adjacent to it that's up for sale, that was not.
We did talk about that. That's been brought up, and it didn't really necessarily go anywhere, but it's something we've recommended. You can get that to increase your parking, to expand in any way. It'd be a great asset to get there. Yes.
It's not an option in the plan right now.
It's not an option in the plan. It's not
No,
really discussed.
It was listed as commercial property, so we felt it was probably out of our price range.
So at this
Not for
point, when
anything, we don't own Chalk Hill either, so yeah, just say no.
around this point in the process, when we presented the sites, most everyone felt we have an existing Chalk Hill. Let's use that resource. We don't really have many sites that are viable. So we kind of concluded with the site options. But then St. Jude did come our way to explore that. So we did review the existing drawings, GIS, toured the building, and we drafted floor plans and created spreadsheets, just like we did with the other schools, to kind of explore the viability here. We also did receive a preliminary due diligence report, which I'll show in a moment. So here we have, this is the area that we can use. Down here is where the septic tank is, and it's going to be given back to the church when the septic is rebuilt up here. But we only have 5.9 acres, so it's the same kind of problem what I mentioned with the 15 acres. It's really hard to utilize this site well for a sizable school. These were some of the deficiencies that were highlighted in the report, so they're not by us, but typical ADA issues with the site, concrete sidewalks kind of wearing. Some of the highlights were structural, where some significant cracks in the masonry walls throughout the building. They are rebuilding one of the bowing walls of the gym. The storage building has mold and it's deteriorating. The roof's definitely exceeding its life. Again, more distress cracking kind of throughout. You see that inside, outside. Architecturally, there's no sprinkler system, which you would need for a school these days. There's several ADA upgrades, common again, same era of all your buildings. Another more ADA stuff was stair rails, handrails, plumbing. The water service, it does not have a backflow preventer. The water heater is nearing its useful life. Heating and ventilation. Ventilation is done through the windows, which we don't want in schools today. You need a more robust system, but a lot of that is all antiquated and needs to be replaced. The electrical wattage is low, and the fire alarm is near the end of its useful life. These are some highlights of photos. This is the small kitchen. We were just talking about the problem at Jockey Hollow. This would be a much bigger problem. It really could only be a warming kitchen, I think. This is the existing corridor. It's only 6'6" wide. The minimum for a school is 6 feet. This is pretty narrow for changing classrooms and kids coming out. The classrooms are really nice size. They had 2 doors. They're very sizable. You do see some dated tile, but here's the nurse's restroom. Not ADA compliant, and then some of the exterior was pretty worn down. An additional issue that we see is getting HVAC into this building. We have a very low floor-to-floor, 10'10" and 11'4". If you can see, the ceiling is really tight to the structure, that it's going to be hard to really get ductwork in there. Not impossible, but difficult. So some of the deficiencies that we saw here were a lack of special ed space. We did program some of the small rooms for that. There's no art or music classrooms. There's only 11 classrooms. No media center, no secure vestibule, limited administration space, no elevator and other ADA shortages, and no sprinkler. But we did try to program that. We did give a couple options that we did through charts. What if it was an elementary school? What if it was a middle school? And then what if it was our 5 through 6? Our 5 through 6 is really the only one that addresses the enrollment problem, so that's what we tried to implement here. We did get all the classrooms in. We got a media center in. We have 1 art, 1 music, 1 technology. We couldn't hit all the program. We can't add on a separate cafeteria. As I show you the site plan, so this is the existing building. We would need to add a 3rd floor, and I don't know how possible that is yet. We would need to add an addition on the side, maximizing the site as much as we could. You could maybe squeeze a field up there on top of the septic system, but bus circulation, parent circulation, it seems impossible. So this was kind of ruled out, and yes.
You look at splitting it, but not a school, but, sorry, Joe, but a big thing like administrative staff, putting administrative offices in there?
It was discussed a little, but then it was also adding on another building on top of adding on Chalk Hill. It just didn't seem viable.
And you mentioned we don't own Chalk Hill. I know the town does, and they're going to give it to us. But remember, we voted the $3 million for St. Jude as a community center. I brought it up at Ad Hoc. I'll bring it up now. We did not purchase that. So I think for me, what annoyed me the most is the cafeteria. We're going to have to bring in food every day. 5 days a week, a food truck's going to have to come in. They cannot cook hot lunch.
For a community center.
Right? Am I right?
Jerry, you mean for a community center or for a school?
No, for a school.
Yeah, it's not viable. You said it's not viable for a school.
But
is it
won't
viable?
work.
Not that I don't want to give him lunch, but, can administrative offices, non-school
But
related?
I'll go back to what I
be in the
said. It
building?
was a community. I don't see, this is what I got frustrated at. This is what I don't understand. So we bought it for a community center, so now we're going to use it for admin.
I don't know how much space is there. I'm just looking at all the options, right? Yeah, that's what I thought you guys.
We looked at it, but to Jerry's point, it would have to go back to a town vote to
Well,
get
so is Chalk Hill.
reallocated, most likely. No, Chalk Hill, we'll get into that.
Well, I think the bottom line is, and as we need to look at, is where do we need the kids and the teachers, right? That drive what we're building, right? That first and foremost, that's kind of in your lap, Joe. I mean, we need to drive it from that perspective and figure out what we're doing from there. It's my perspective.
Which goes back to Chalk Hill, 1 roof, 1 campus.
That's what we want. We want a campus
Ideally.
setting. That's it.
Not a 7th building.
Yeah.
Are you going to ask me what year I graduated from that school?
No. Same here.
So with that, we took a little deeper dive into option B and option F1. Those were the 2 chosen options kind of that we explored. So this is kind of one of the diagrams we had. So option B, kind of laying all that out. We looked at space needs and started to figure out how much additional space these buildings were going to need. Again, went over the utilization rates, existing square footage, reimbursed square footage. We're kind of starting to think like, how much do we have to work with? But in order to enhance the program at all of these schools, they still need additions. So Chalk Hill answers your enrollment problem. You'll have enough space for everyone once Chalk Hill's online. But if you do want to improve the programs to that chart that we had set up, we do need to add additions on. So we also, the administration put together a list of pros and cons, and they did this for each of the options, but I just had the main two here. I can't read that, so I'm not going to try.
I can't.
So option F, when we were exploring that, we know that there's going to have to be new boundary lines. If you're going to have two schools, your district lines, or there's redistricting, we don't really know where that is, and all I was trying to say is I'm kind of playing with numbers. The numbers would change as you guys kind of figure that out. So option F also required, option F also required additions here. This was the therapeutic day, alternative ed school, so we didn't need anything at Monroe Elementary, and with a K-3, we were able to fit everything in comfortably at Stepney.
Your red boxes didn't show up again.
Did I,
They're on
there's
the-
one here, I see that one.
Right, but there should be one off the K3 in the back, and there should be the third floor of Chalk Hill. So on the...
Oh, yeah, you're right, that's why the space is here, you're right.
Yep, on the landing page is the presentation, and those boxes are there.
Okay, so we did have a smaller addition.
Yeah,
So
at the end of that
yes,
long
Stephanie
lane.
did have almost 5,000 square feet added on. And then this is where we introduced, this is where the discussion of a third floor at Chalk Hill started, because we were going to add 3 grades there. It would only work if we were going to add up. Again, list of pros and cons. You can see the cons to get longer with this one. And ultimately, option B ended up getting voted on at this point. I just want to take a minute to explain the state application process, because you guys still have like 5 days to get your application in. Okay, so through the Department of Administration, the school construction grants, they offer 3 types of project paths. And Monroe does have a reimbursement rate of 37.86 for this 2025 year. It will change a little bit next year, likely drop a little bit, not much, but it usually goes down. For new construction, they are trying to get you to reuse your old buildings, so they take 10% off. If you're going to build new, you get less money back. So we have priority projects, which are alterations, major renovations, which I refer to as renovate as new, or new construction. Those are yearly applications due by June 30th, and then by December 15th, you need to hand your referendum information in. Non-priority projects, you can apply monthly from the 1st to the 10th, and these are going to be your code violations, roof projects, window projects, any of the security projects, lots of smaller projects that schools definitely take advantage of. And then the third route is the HVAC project, which they had for 2 years, but this year they have not had it. But they talk of making it a permanent category, and I hope for your sake it does come back, because I think you guys can utilize that for Jockey Hollow and Massac, those kind of things. So there's a kind of intensive local process that has to go on before applying. The municipality has to authorize the Board of Ed to apply through the superintendent, and that's going to take a secure funding authorization. So this is just kind of a little more detail, and I tried to put the links in there so you guys can kind of get on the website and look at any of that. The application process, you have to submit educational specifications, and those are some pretty detailed, basically a detailed report about what's going into the building, what's the need for it. So yeah, the general purpose, enrollment data, that's where we need those 10-year projections, but only looking at the 8 years. The support facilities, the space and site needs, basically kind of pleading your case of why this is needed and what you're going to be putting into this building. So next we're going to just talk about costs. Because these types of projects are very conceptual in nature. We're program planning, but we're not detailing anything. We don't know a lot yet. So we look at cost per square foot, very typical at this stage of the process. So we established rates. So new construction and additions are at $1,000 a square foot, and renovations are $850. We established these rates at the beginning of the project, but we've talked about the tariffs that are coming on, and they are increasing things. So I've kept the numbers to keep everything similar, but as you do apply, since you're not applying this year, apply next year, reevaluate that. But for now, we're kind of sticking with these numbers. This is a list of the priority list from the school grants. This is the 2024 and 2025. You can see less and less people are starting to do projects. This is the shortest I've ever seen the list before. But really, we wanted to kind of look at projects. So these are new construction, you see just under 1,000, just over 1,000. The green are renovation. Those costs can sway a lot depending on how much reconfiguration you're doing, how much of that's addition. So those just kind of feed into the numbers that we just told you about that we're going to use. Ultimately, we started doing the costs when we were comparing option B and option F1. So this is one of the first few that we did do that. So you'll see option B with RNV, that means renovate as new, so it's full renovations versus piecemeal little renovations. So we do compare that for a while, but we do make recommendations as we move forward. So this is additional summary information, again, providing you that information. So this is where F1 kind of goes away. We're now going to focus on all those. They did disappear again. Anyway, this had the additions that we're proposing. So now as we get into option B, we really want to develop this program better so we can understand those size needs, because that feeds directly into your costs. We're going to develop conceptual site plans, floor plans, and estimates, along with priorities, timelines, and then get into, do we need portables or not? So we established Chalk Hill as priority 1A. It's the most important part of this. It's going to handle your enrollment need that is upcoming. So this is a summary of all the programming that went into this. When we first started exploring, we were going to put an addition at the ground level just to support the therapeutic day and alternative education population. And as we kind of planned it out in a little more detail, it really didn't feel adequate. It's kind of basement, it's not basement space, but it was taking up needed site space and it wasn't doing a lot. So we then started to talk about that third floor coming back. What if the third floor came back and they went up, so they were all upstairs, that's those dark blue classrooms. But we had a lot of empty space here. And this is where that 37.86 rate gets hit, because this is the enrollment projections. You only, based on your population, you're not going to get your full reimbursement. So it hurts the cost. This project would be $76 million. So then we started to think about central office is over at Monroe Elementary School, taking up their space. And quite frankly, the 5,000 square feet they have, it's not enough for them. They need more space, so we kind of programmed them out, and they're just under 10, or actually with everything added on, they're around 14,000, I think.
14.
So we then look at what if...
That was include the art class?
No, the art class, this is just the red, the red, and then program it the way they would need to more. Oh, gosh, sorry. So we start looking at them going upstairs. What if, half of it's therapeutic day, and then central office is there, and we have alternative ed in the lower level because they like a more quiet, secluded type of space from the school. Some things we did highlight in this slide was you will need a height variance to add another floor on. We also, don't know structurally yet if this is achievable. And we also, as I mentioned at the other school, we do have a low floor-to-floor here too. So we just wanted to, this isn't the slide that had that, but I did want to point that out. There is a low floor-to-floor here, so we will have ceiling height challenges at this school. Yes.
You looked at pushing out the far corner. Did you look at pushing out the side where the town has park space on the side?
So that is, I didn't draw that, but it was talked about that if this floor does not work out, there is an option to kind of pull out, do something on the side that you could drive under, so we can still maximize our site. So it's kind of like the back pocket plan. Everyone seemed to be like gung-ho for this third floor, or fourth floor, however you want to call it. So that's what we explored. And I'll get into more detail walking you through this because I kind of zoom in now. So we did take the plan and we improved some of the administration space that wasn't really working. We improved a lot of ADA issues that you wouldn't necessarily be able to pick up, but there's door swings and all sorts of things. Alternative ed, we put some windows in down here so that they can actually have windows and make it a nice space. So on this side of the building facing Jockey Hollow, this is where central office could come up and have a stair that goes up to that new floor along with an elevator. And that way they're kind of kept separate from the school because we know we want to keep that a little more separate. But what we did was turn the multi-purpose room into 2 music classrooms, and then the old music classroom becomes technology and 2 art classrooms. That's what we needed to hit the program. We have the gym, and we can convert that back to a stage, probably more fitting for this age group. We can get 2 resource or special ed rooms over here, and then you have your 14 classrooms for grade 5 on the ground level. Then moving up the next flight, we have a lot of our special ed and resource and administration space kind of in this front wing, and then your 14 classrooms for grade 6. We have the cafeteria here, some administration space, and then your media center here. We're going to have to rebuild most of these bathrooms. That's the beauty of the Renovate is New project. You can touch everything. We have to touch everything and bring it up to a 20 to 50 year standard. So this is the now new upper level. So we're kind of putting this was an existing fire door here, but it can separate the 2 programs a little bit. Therapeutic Day gets all the classrooms they need, along with some administration and break room space. They can get a nice multi-purpose room space over here that kind of overlooks the cafeteria. And then on the opposite side, so people would come up, be greeted here, and each department now is kind of in their own space. And they also would have a larger multi-purpose room that can convert into 2 conference rooms. So on the site plan, we do see a potential need for increasing parking. Obviously, we have this is meant to signify that there could be major retaining walls. This will have to be explored more. This is very conceptual. We recommend putting gates here so that this can be a play zone when buses don't need to circulate. You could fit 2 youth size fields here, but then just highlighting the entrance for central office and then the main entrance for the school. So this is, if you remember that last number when no one was upstairs, the reimbursement was hurt. You're going to achieve most of your reimbursement here, and this would cost the town $67.8 million. Okay, any questions? All right, now moving on to Monroe Elementary School. This was our second priority. It's also a fairly urgent priority. The mechanical systems here are in tunnels and failing. The utility bills are enormous and comparable to the high school. This school needs some attention. So here's that programming that we developed here. We do need to add on to this school. This is before we had the space available upstairs. So now if we get that space upstairs, we can put three fourth grade classrooms upstairs, along with 2 special ed rooms. And I'll walk you from the beginning. So you see a lot more purple in this building that has more functional classrooms. We really cleaned everything up, got all the classrooms they needed in, expand their media center. We did have to steal a little space from the cafeteria, but that cafeteria is pretty oversized there. So we were able to get 2 small special ed classrooms there. But in order to get a learning lab, if that is the desire in the end, we do need 1 addition. We could get it all in. We tried hard, but putting on 1 little addition there would be the plan to hit all the programs. What's that?
Does that addition push into the field?
It does. We tried to explore going here. I was hoping here would work, but we were just blocking windows. This felt like the best option. So here you can see where it is here. And we also, there needs to be some parking expansion. It'd be nice, if we could get that property and it could go here. Perhaps there's some connectivity that could go on to School Street here just to relieve some congestion. Not a sore point.
That property's owned, actually.
It is.
By Alan.
And the person across the street from it.
Thank you for
He
your
actually
donation.
lives on it.
The price just doubled.
There's no way my neighbor would ever sell anything to the school system, so.
But you,
Sure.
it's being recorded.
Good answer for recording.
So we are recommending a renovate as new here. Strip this whole building down to the skeleton essentially, rebuild all of the infrastructure, renovate the classrooms with new finishes, reconfigure all those spaces we need to reconfigure. So the renovate as new for the existing, and then we have a small addition here, totals the project almost to 52 million. Your reimbursement is almost maximized. We had to deduct just a little bit, and it's a $33 million to the town. So next is Fawn Hollow. We considered Fawn Hollow and Stepney to be pretty neck and neck. They have the same issues, same era, but Fawn Hollow is the one kind of hurting more with enrollment, so we kind of put that one ahead of Stepney a little. So Fawn Hollow, we have our spreadsheet here with what we needed to add, and it totaled around 12,000. And we were thinking we can't add on over here because of the wetland limits are really encroaching over here. We can only add here, which I get is field space. Leaching fields are under here. So there's a lot going on there. But how we ended up programming it is we did add a secure vestibule here to your lobby. We did expand the nurse, expanded over, took a classroom to expand administration and get the nurse a bigger space. We increased the music classrooms. We need 2 music classrooms for this population. So we increased those, kept those close to the cafeteria and stage. And what was nice about this school is it's this central zone with all your shared resources. So we're kind of expanding that over because it's growing. We put the media center back to 2 classrooms and put a new media center that would open into a nice courtyard and learning courtyard here. You have your 2 art classrooms, additional special ed, the learning lab, and then we needed to add 2 more classrooms. We connect over here and lose a classroom. We also had to increase the bathrooms. Those bathrooms are so narrow, we couldn't get them to meet ADA without enlarging them. But everything fits pretty well here. It is a larger addition, it is over 12,000, so I did factor in the size, which I'll share with you in a moment. But here's the site plan. So it definitely would take away some field space, but you still could get a soccer field back there. We are showing options for portable locations. We'll get into that in a moment, but this is the school that's going to need them first. We'd want to put them in a location where it wouldn't hurt where you're going to put the addition, because those will be valuable when you are looking at adding, working on this building. Parking is at a premium here. They need to expand. There's really nowhere to go but over the existing septic fields that are for Chalk Hill. So, once this becomes a real project and a civil engineer is on there, that needs to be explored. You're going to have to redo that septic for Chalk Hill anyway, so could it be one with gullies under the pavement, possibly? We also would need a covert over that river there to expand that covert. You have a question?
Yeah, those adjacent fields, the gray part of that for Chalk Hill?
This?
To the right of that field.
Here.
Where it's grayed out. What is that?
Well, the property line is just cut off.
Don't we have those as fields for Chalk Hill? On the other slide?
No.
No, you're at Fawn
So
Hollow.
I'm just focusing on the Fawn Hollow site right now.
Top right corner.
So
Yeah, you
this
can't
is
see
the
Chalk
road
Hill.
to Chalk Hill. Chalk Hill's up here.
Yeah.
Short driveway.
Well, it might
So
be a
is
little farther.
So the field's right where plan is then, right? Up that way for Chalk Hill in that other diagram?
You're talking about the field out in front of Chalk Hill?
Yeah.
That's the septic, that's that expanded
the septic.
parking up in the top right.
That's why we never use it. It's, yeah.
Yeah. It was the only space available, and then I figured out why. I'm like, oh, septic's there. And I do have a slide that shows the whole campus coming up, so if there's more questions, we can look at that. Also, just pointing out, like, that's your, your secure way out. The problem we had with this site is you have one way out, one way in. So if each school has a bailout, that's good. So option B, we did have two options. So renovate as new, which we really do recommend because you'll be able to address everything here. It would be $48 million to the town if we build this addition, renovate the entire building. If you do pieces where we address facility conditions, do alterations for this programming internally, and then the addition, if we increase the parking lot, if we have to redo septic, we're kind of preliminary programming all those components into its own project. This would end up being a 31.6 to the town. So you can kind of compare those two options, really. Again, this gets you everything versus this gets you pieces. So Stepney's next in line. We know that we want to put an addition to Stepney. These felt like the best two options for the location. It's a little bit flat over here. We can kind of extend this wing, but there's not a ton of room before the site starts to drop. We did talk about how the bus loop kind of goes deep into the building and people are parking down here. What if the front of the building kind of moved forward and we created a courtyard? And that's what we do explore in floor plan. We create addition in the middle here. So we have a new entrance with your administration suite, additional administration, the nurse, school psych, and the kind of behavioral here. You put an art and a music and the learning lab here that opens up to this nice courtyard now. The older administration spaces, since they're small, work well for some of those special ed needs. So we reprogrammed a lot of these spaces and kind of refixed that. We expanded the media center a bit and just kind of moved the students' classrooms around, grouped together. The nice thing here too, we have a level change here and there's just a chair lift at this stair. Now we can create a switchback ramp that would kind of address that level change and kind of bring the gym, not on its a little end, kind of by itself. It becomes a nice inclusive plan here. So this building, what we're suggesting is that you need to expand the parking and create separate parent and drop-off loops. We're not drawing that. We're kind of just saying that's where it needs to happen. We need some storm retention. Those we have to include on sites. There's limited area, so we recommend maybe putting that under the parking lot. And then there's room for field improvements here, which was a request of the RFP to kind of look in where can we expand our fields. This seems like the best school for that. The site is dropping a bit, but this is kind of the flattest area here. So this project, again, renovate as new to the town. It would end up costing $43.5 million. If you do the pieces again, facility conditions, alterations, additions, parking lot, septic, it would end up costing $29.2 to the town. So now looking at Jockey Hollow. This was the same kind of scenario we were exploring for both option F and B. Really, it was just focusing in on how can we address this cafeteria issue. It's not an easy solution because we are landlocked with the service drive, with the wetlands. Yeah, there's a little bit of patio space here, but how do you connect that to the cafeteria? So what we were proposing was to push the servery out a little and then create a nice kind of glassy, it's a thin addition to the back. We could bump out farther if if that is needed into this area. We kind of just put a little retaining wall to create a safety buffer from that service drive, but it would, opening it up and making it glassy and adding a little bit more space would be helpful. So that's what we planned here. So for the cost for Jockey Hollow, we do have the cafeteria expansion, we have the servery expansion, media center modernization, just a placeholder for that, facility conditions, so it totals the project up. You get some reimbursement on these projects. I'm kind of pointing out for the facility conditions which projects are eligible And I used that, and that would cost 22.7 to the town. Massac High School, we're not proposing much of anything here. The problems are addressed once the STEM wing frees up and they have more space to kind of go into. They'll end up having 6 classrooms that become available for reprogramming, which will help them. And then we're kind of just adding those facility conditions up, adding the reimbursement, assuming HVAC projects do come back online. We'll get some reimbursement there. This would be a $35.1 million to the town. So here's just a summary of it all together. I took the renovate as new approach for each of the elementary schools, and the total altogether would be $228 million. Obviously, that doesn't happen all at once, and obviously, over time, prices are going to change, so it's kind of, I don't want to say it's silly to look at it all at one, but it paints a picture for sure. So this was just kind of us summarizing those priorities of what needs to happen. Chalk Hill really addresses the first major problem. And then, the purpose of a master plan is to really show the whole district getting to its ideal state. So that's really what we're showing. Those plans are going to evolve over time, I'm sure. All right, so more importantly, we have this deadline coming up, which is in 5 days. We had a project that we know is important to get out. So we kind of came up with a schedule of how, and I'm not going to be able to read that from here at all. So this was our schedule that if you wanted to apply this year, what needs to happen. And basically, in these few months here that we're already past, we need to get all sorts of approvals and everything. This is the state process when you would get your approval. So that's like when your funding is secure and you can start billing them. And we broke this up into a typical project path, SD, DD, and CD. That's schematic design, design development, construction documents. And then this is bidding and getting state approvals. And then this red bar is your construction. And the star is when we can get everyone in. The goal is to get everyone in for the 29-30 school year. Because, well, and then so we came up with another option. If you don't apply this year, because we realized there's a lot going on here, we're not going to be able to get all the approvals in time, you could start the design in advance and then apply. You'll have a better picture of what things are going to cost, what your needs are, to be able to have a better application, a better standing of the overall costs. But it's an upfront risk. You have to pay for those design services and all of those pieces out of pocket until you're approved later down the road. So when you're approved down here, you're already done with design. That is the kind of problem with it, but it also answers so many other unknowns and helps address things that I personally think this is the way the state should do it, because you know more. It's just smarter instead of towns going back and asking for more money, because that's happened over the last few years a lot. And it can get you to the same end goal. But do keep in mind, we're showing our best thoughts on construction. We're not the CM. We don't really know. We think this is about a 18 to 24 month project. So this was the punch list that needs to be addressed before I think the town is willing to kind of approve everything. So, we're issuing this final report. I was trying to get it for everyone for today, but I need to look at it a little bit more, but we're almost there. So we'll have a report for you shortly. And then, there's a lot of funding items that needs to happen. A structural engineer should really go evaluate Chalk Hill and just in general, and then what is the viability of a third floor. And then again, there's hazmats, health department issues that want to be looked at. But then, the process begins with you all. Board of Ed is the one to kind of adopt this and move forward. So what are the effects of the timeline? We have one more little wrinkle. Portables. So what we did was we took the M&P Planning's enrollment data for each school, and I converted that into classrooms. How many classrooms do these students need? And so here's next year, 2025, here's your classroom needs, and here's your existing classroom. So we are just making it with one extra room possibly at Monroe Elementary, but things look okay. Next 26-27 school year, Fawn Hollow is going to need another classroom, if not more. You can see a decimal point, but it's 0.1. At times, they might end up just having a little bit of bigger class sizes to address it, but when I put it in red, it's really approaching the need for another one. When it's in a yellow, you could probably work with a bigger class size. So Stephanie's starting to approach it. And then the next year, the following year, Fawn Hollow is going to need 2 classrooms. And it kind of the same, Stephanie's going to start to need one also. Definitely by the 29-30. So this is the year we'd hope to have Chalk Hill up and running, if we can kind of beat that need. Then we look at the middle school and high school ramifications, and our projections are showing that the 29-30 school year, that is when Jockey Hollow is going to need another one. So again, kind of that pressing need to get this school ready for that school year. So then we just look at costs for portables, because portables are not as cheap as we all kind of thought they were. Most classrooms come with 2 classrooms, 2 bathrooms, and then added space. You have to have ADA accessibility. Typically, they're supposed to be covered walkways to protect from snow, but usually if you have a facility department that's going to shovel and protect everyone, they usually let you get away from that if need be. We found some recently bid 2 classroom portables here that connect to the school right here. And this was their bid number. So we got the cost of the portable from the manufacturer. To purchase one, it's $250,000, and you can rent one for $213,000 for 5 years. I just kind of used a 5-year as an example. But the bid to do the foundation work, the electrical work, the plumbing work related to this could be close to $1,850,000 is what we got. So the total construction's $1.1 million. With your soft costs for designs, permits, all the pieces that go with it, it's going to be a $1.3 million project. Obviously, if you keep adding classrooms, that number won't grow as much because the plumbing costs are kind of to get the plumbing to there.
Site suitability, where you put your red blocks, did you assess those areas?
I picked those areas because they weren't going to hit the addition and they weren't hitting the septic. That was the sole reason. Trying to be kind of close to doors, but they're a little bit kind of pushed out.
How many classrooms can they accommodate? You said 2.
They typically come in 2s, but you can do as many as you need to, really. And I will say, because I didn't mention this, for Renovate is New, when you are renovating a building, a lot of times people do portables because you're going to take kids out of one wing, renovate that wing, and you move them through. The great part about doing additions is you build the addition first, swing kids into there. So it's a long process, but that's typically how a lot of occupied schools go. The beauty with Chalk Hill, it's not occupied. That can get done without interfering with anything, aside from the site, I guess.
Class sizes you used, were those the contractually obligated sizes?
Yes, we use the max class size policies. That's how we figured out all the capacity, all that. And then we just compared it just to 2 classroom addition at the rate that we've been using. So you can see the 1.3, it's got a 10 to 15 year lifespan, to the 2.2, the 50 plus year lifespan. So with that, we have concluded everything. We know that there's a major challenge here. Option B is the answer. It uses your existing resources, the history that Chalk Hill was utilized as, and it really addresses that major problem of your enrollment. And then your kind of second phase is really looking at improving your programming at the other schools.
You done?
Yeah, I guess.
That's it?
Michelle, thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you.
It's better in the report. I wrote it better than I said it.
No, you didn't. You did a nice job.
Thank you, Michelle.
So CES use for special ed, I know we want to internalize this is best for the students, but have we maxed out our external capabilities? I mean, moving students and opening up mass, they can't even, special ed,
So the question is, have we
Have we
maximized?
maxed out our CES use for a special?
I don't know. I'm sure CS still has
I know it's not.
space for.
We have
So it's not
plenty
cheap.
of
Yeah.
space, but
Yeah, what do you
it's
mean?
not about that.
Situation.
Yeah, it's definitely have space for us. It's really not what we're really.
But I know it's not preferred. I
Right.
got that.
Yes, no,
Yeah.
we're not maxed out in that.
No.
That's-
And the other thing, I hate to be Dennis Downer, but having been the only one here, I think, who's been on a building committee in this town. Actually, I've been on 4 of them, over 3 selectmen. Nothing happens quickly, and we finally got EMS built, but it took 3 selectmen, and I don't even want to talk about the years of committees. Our timeline was really tight, and I know Facebook follies is Facebook follies, everything can happen in a minute. But, I want to put it in perspective. I mean, this goes to first selectman, after we get done with it, it goes to Board of Finance, goes to Town Council, then it goes to the town referendum if you're spending more than $1 on bonding. So there's nothing in that scenario that happens quickly. I just want to put it in perspective so everybody knows what we're up against.
Right, so that's why she said we're looking at next June to submit it. I mean, Trumbull built the school in 14 months now. Depends how you want to look at the
I
hours.
didn't build the EMS in Trumbull. I'm just talking about
It
reality.
depends how you look at the hours. It could be done. It
It can be
done.
done.
Just for the sake of agenda, I thank you very much, Michelle, for that. We'll move into, just to continue the discussion on recommendations and discussions of the Ad Hoc Facilities Committee. I want to add in there, Michelle went over a lot, what a great job the Ad Hoc Facilities Committee did. In addition to everything that Michelle reviewed, the Ad Hoc Committee did put out a survey with over 500 and something responses. Parents put out surveys. A couple of them are here tonight. Thank you. They got over 500 responses. And through public participation and presentations from parents, all greatly influenced the Ad Hoc Committee's decisions on a lot of these things. We heard loud and clear that they did not want Monroe L closed, that they wanted to keep it as a community elementary. We heard from Spec Ed. We heard from a lot of people, and we really took that to heart. And that influenced our decisions. So those 3 things I wanted to mention were also part of the ad hoc group. The Monroe Board of Education is in a position right now where we need space. This is coming, whether we like it or not. We're going to have to do portables, whether we like it or not. Whether this goes to plan to 2029 or not, we're doing portables. And number 1 is space. Number 2 is our facilities are in trouble. We have a phenomenal school system, phenomenal staff, phenomenal facilities crew. No dig on Dan and his crew. But we have, a 100-year-old, almost 100-year-old building. Budgetary issues, we're always trying to watch the budgets. But the bottom line is our buildings need some help. And the Board of Education needs to come up with a plan. We need to come up with a plan to say, hey, town, here's what we would like to do. Here's what we've identified these needs. I don't see too many wants here. This is needs. This is bare bones stuff, right? We're not asking for, pools in every building and helicopter pads and all this stuff. So these are needs, space needs, renovation needs. And I would like to see us move forward and speak to the town because they have needs too, with facilities and everything else, and come up with a 20, 30-year plan, whatever it is, with the Board of Education and the town to move forward, overlay all of this, and move forward. It's not going to be cheap, but we have to move something, and we cannot kick the can. So I'm going to get off that pedestal for a minute. I see Mike Ganino walked in too from the committee. Thank you, Mike, for popping in. Is there anybody here from Ad Hoc Facilities Committee want to add anything about what we did, what we looked at? What are we missing here? If I can hit a couple people, Tim, Megan, Steve, anybody on that side? Mike? Because we've been meeting since December.
I think my only comment would be, you've got a very high level, hour and 20-minute presentation of what we've been doing for a number of months. an hour, 2 hours a night, whatever it might have been.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of detail behind this. There's a lot of discussion behind all of the options that were not chosen. And I guess I would go back to Joe's comment in the beginning, it's all online. And
Yeah.
I think you all would be, serve yourself well to go read the documents that are out there, to look at the other presentations, and the detail that Michelle has provided. So this was a good overview. And keep in mind, this is still at a pretty high level.
Good point, Steve, too. And just looking at some of the notes that I made, when I say these are needs, Monroe Elementary is heated with steam. So is the Titanic. Fawn Hollow, Dan, baseboard electric, right? Lee is here with single pane windows.
It's a good thing electricity's coming down.
This is, price of electricity. So, we're very serious about this. And ladies and gentlemen, too, board, we still need to move forward with our capital projects. Dan has done a phenomenal job with roofs and septic and HVAC and no matter what. So we still need to move forward with those capital projects, right? A new turf field coming due pretty soon. So we're in for it. Anyone on this side, Bill or anyone, Jen, Dan from facilities? Lee? Lee was on facilities too. Anything? What did we miss? Just to let the board know, what else did we look at?
I mean, from my perspective, I think Michelle did a really nice job talking about incorporating extra special education space that is much needed right now, because we do have up to 3 special ed teachers working in a classroom and pulling small groups in. And so it's really not conducive for that type of learning for them. So I think adding that extra space and specializing, if you will, is really great. And of course, the therapy program, finding space for that is something that's really important.
Right now, I know
From my perspective.
Dan has emptied out some closets and they're now used for therapy and different things. So janitor closets, literally. Yeah.
Well, I think this was obviously a very comprehensive overview, and my concern would be, like, some of the decision makers, like the Board of Finance, First Selectmen, haven't been part of this process. Like, what's the plan to get them up to speed?
So moving forward, I do want to mention that
Have they?
Jonathan, Chair of Board
of Finance or the First Selectmen toured
Yep.
any of the buildings or?
he's been through a little bit. Rebecca, Chair of Board of Finance, and Jonathan, Chair of Town Council, were part of this committee and participated in all of that discussion. We wanted full transparency, and obviously Steve was here as well from Board of Finance, but we had those 2 chairs in. I understand the process, moving forward, and Bill actually got us together a little bit with some people, with building officials, some preliminary discussion with the fire marshal, right, Bill, for the 3rd floor of Chalk Hill, those type of things. There was input there. We as a Board of Education need to move forward with, we need to make a decision about what we would like to do, all right, in an ideal world. So here's what we would like to do. That's our next step. That may include some of the, Michelle, can you go back to the slide that shows like the costs for moving forward, like the engineering stuff? No, yeah, that one. Part of our next discussion needs to be, do we go to Board of Finance or do we have the money to fund some of this stuff? Because if we're going to move forward and ask the town for a plan for Chalk Hill, for example, do we need to do that engineering study before we go and ask of that? So we may have some homework here to do, probably, and then the board, we need to make our mind, and then we send a nice letter to our First Selectman that says pretty please, and then he puts that into motion with Town Council, Board of Finance, and all that for the funding of it.
I think it's similar to what Michelle was saying with, doing the design first, using the time for that. Same thing with those engineering studies. Would make sense to have it all done so all the answers are there,
I like that plan that Michelle did because it's much more finite as far as numbers and, yeah.
But even with, having to present something to Board of Finance, it's like, we know we have to do that, may as well just find out first. So the whole package that they're getting is,
Yeah,
I believe, but I could be wrong, town council can't just turn Chalk Hill back. I think it has to go to a town referendum. So that's an extra gap in time right there.
Jonathan wasn't too sure about that when he talked to us.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
wrong.
either referendum or town council has to vote on it,
Right.
because that's a
Right.
separate ask.
Yeah.
The other thing, we've got a big ask here, there's no doubt, and it's a big need. But, and it's been 45-plus years of neglect, even though everybody's done a yeoman's job to keep the pieces together. Are there any pieces of this that add expense reduction, like solar roofs, or anything there to kind of eliminate some of our current expense?
Well, you get reimbursement for those types of projects.
Okay, but that's not factored in, right?
Then I think we could put that into our, we also have operational costs
Right.
that we have to look into, as well. So I think we should absolutely look into that, those options, the solar and all that.
well, just
Yeah.
by replacing windows, you gain efficiency and,
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and those costs were in our facility conditions, not necessarily solar, but the roofs where they were needed within that 10-year window, at least. But then with the renovate as new, you can do all of that within it.
Okay.
So-
Then the facilities committee talked about where do we put the kids when we renovate as new. So a third floor on Chalk Hill would help there. Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, one of the things that I appreciate about this plan is that it addresses the therapeutic day school. Because even without anything that would move forward, the costs to the district for outplacement are going to increase year after year. So with the addition of a therapeutic day school within the district, it's going to have a positive effect on the reduction of costs.
Correct. And Jen spoke of that too, less in transportation,
Less than C,
And
all of that.
is extremely expensive.
is that therapeutic day school something that we could accept students from outside of district?
Yeah.
And turn it into a revenue stream?
Revenue,
Okay.
yeah.
And there's enough space with a,
The third floor.
yeah, there would be, that would, okay.
Yeah, the
Well, it's going to be the best program, so we're going to be taking a lot of kids
So we
in.
got 10 grand, we're going to start putting it
Yeah,
into that.
yeah.
Okay.
Jerry, go
To
ahead.
jump on to what Greg said, so, and I know it's estimates, I got that. So you're looking at $40,000 that either we come up with, so I'm adding up the figures.
Yep.
So you're looking at $40,000, and that would give us a good eye or vision.
A more complete,
30,000, I don't know how you're at.
Oh, 30, sorry.
That would put you.
Sorry, well,
We do math.
sorry. 30,000.
He was a shop teacher.
Thank you. Give you
Not math.
$30,000, but that would give you what you need.
it gives you the numbers and the answers that
It gives you the
comes
numbers.
together,
It's better,
For Board of
yeah,
Finance.
definitely.
And then to get back to what you
Right,
said, Greg,
instead of-
when the ad hoc asked about the monies, and I don't want to speak for you, but didn't you project what we could earn over a few years, or am I misspeaking?
I didn't project what we could earn, I projected what we could save.
Okay, so I'm sorry, save.
We're talking about millions of dollars a year that I spend on outplacements, so between $2 and $3 million a year, between tuition and transportation, so.
we can name the wing after you.
Yeah,
Be a donation of
good point.
30,000, we gotta
Good
go.
point. So, board, it's 7:30. We're not going to solve anything here tonight. Our next meeting, our regular next meeting is July 14th. We don't have a second meeting in July. We're going to have to schedule a second meeting for this facilities discussion and also get some public participation as well as we move forward. So do you want to schedule a second one in July, or do we keep our August meeting because we typically cancel our August meeting and we can use that for this?
What I'd like to see at some meeting is really the thought out, what does it take to get to the goal, so we don't miss next June for the application.
Yep.
And that we're well in advance. If we can get this all, wrapped up by the end of, is it possible to get it wrapped up by the end of the year with all the approvals and presentations and referendums? Is that possible?
By next June?
By the end of this year, to have all of that process?
Oh, I don't,
By June. I've always said it is. I've been told by the
Yeah,
town
by-
it's not, but I don't know how, because they can call a special meeting anytime they want.
Right, just post
Town
it.
council can call a special meeting, Board of Finance can call a special meeting.
We called the special
We call
meeting.
special meetings.
Yeah.
But I've been informed by some people, oh, it won't happen, you're trying to push it. It's not pushing it.
By
It's,
the end of December?
I think that's 6 months. I mean, that's plenty of time.
It is plenty of time.
For how many months already?
I think at our next meeting, I think this board could pretty much decide whether we want to stick with the recommendation or not. And then to Jerry's point, do we spend the 30, 40 and move some of this stuff forward, or at least go to Board of Finance and say, can we pretty please have a special appropriation for this, to do this, to get the more specific numbers and have a better plan when we do send that letter to the
I
first
think we
election.
should spend the 30,000 and get the information we would need to help with the proposal. And then I won't be at that meeting, so I'll just voice my support for
You could call
Plan
in.
B.
So,
You get called.
Where are you?
so,
I think it might be like 2 in the
So-
morning or something.
so question, a second meeting in July?
Yeah, I think on, because if I'm looking at this right, the original meeting is August 18th, that was kind of late.
That's yeah, we always do them July and August. We always do one in the middle of the month,
So
or we
maybe
can go beginning of August.
If we're trying to push everybody else's timeline, I think we need to push our timeline. Right? So
Yeah, if we're shooting for December
The other
31st.
question I had, and I don't know what's on there, or if it was, I missed it, contingency cost for construction? Do you have a factor in there?
20%?
Not at this point. The square foot number kind of has all that in there. That's why it's very theoretical at this point. And note that often these projects, you don't always get your full reimbursement. They'll hit you for little things here and there. Less in the renovate is new, more in the piecemeal projects.
What does your company normally do for contingency cost for construction projects, percentage-wise?
10%, but those costs are total project costs, so it technically has that in there. Do you know what I'm saying? So it has
You
everything.
built that in, okay.
I mean, it's 10%, and then you whittle it down as you get more into design.
Oh, yeah.
But we always keep at least 5.
Yeah, we
Everything would, Jerry's, everything else will do. Get busy, Jerry.
yeah. Are we saying we would like a meeting on the 21st or 20? Is it 28th?
21st or 28th are the other two Mondays.
I
Who's
could
on
do the
vacation?
28th,
Who's on-
not the 21st.
28?
I
28?
could do the 28th. I can't
Jerry?
do the 21st.
I think I can do the 28th, yeah.
Sounds like we're having a meeting on the 28th.
Joe?
Joe?
Are you available on the 28th?
Sheila?
I am.
So July 28th at 6 o'clock?
Let's do July 28th at 6.
I like 6.
We'll post a special meeting, similar agenda, and we can talk specifically about those costs, and we can have, Ron, you want to take a look at that too? About how we would go, we'd have to go for a special appropriation, correct?
For the
For that, yeah,
30?
for those. Or we can talk a little more about end of year stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. More stuff out of Dan's budget.
It's only been 45 years over the years. Pick another one.
Steve has a question.
Steve, I'm sorry, yep.
Yeah, Michelle, I thought we were talking about a higher number for the structural engineer to look at the upper floor on Chalk Hill.
We had gotten a quote that was a little over 10,000,
Oh,
and we were going to try to talk them down. That was the plan.
okay.
And that would have to include, we know there's asbestos in there, we'd have to include mold and all that, because that's going to be either a bulldoze and all new, or a renovate as
Well,
new.
the key is, can we, the key question is, can we put, the upper floor?
It's key to moving forward.
That's what's got to be answered, in my view, as quickly as possible.
Agree.
Thinking only for myself, not for any other Board of Finance members or members. I would look to see if you all return money to the town, if we do, at the end of the fiscal year, putting in a formal request to the Board of Finance from you all to take some of that money to do those things.
Or we just use some of the end of the year money and just do that one study, get that going. Yeah,
That may be another way is
yeah,
to you.
yeah. We can discuss that next time.
But you're running out of time.
Right, the sooner we get it started, the better,
The end of your.
because that's a big question.
The fiscal year is a few days away.
Yeah. Anybody else? Mr. Stevens?
Mr. Chair, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Mr. Stevens. Can I have a second? Seconded by Dennis. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Unanimous. Good night, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming out.